Welcome to KCA Production, bringing you stories that teach, inspire, and connect. Please subscribe to KCA Production for more amazing stories. Today, we present Red Heart. In every village, there are stories of strength, stories of wisdom, stories of men who rose and men who fell. But among all these stories, there are some that are not told to entertain, that are told to warn. Because not every battle is fought with weapons. Some battles are fought within, inside the heart. And when a man loses control of that battle, the damage is not always seen immediately. It builds slowly, quietly, until one day, it reveals itself in a single moment. A moment that cannot be undone. In a quiet village surrounded by tall trees and open land, there once lived a man whose story would be remembered for generations. Not because he was the strongest, not because he was the wisest, but because of one thing: his heart. People said his heart was different, not weak, not empty, but dangerous. It's born too quickly. It reacted before it understood and spoke before it listened. And in time, that heart earned a name that carried both meaning and warning. They called it the Red Heart. At first, the name sounded like praise, a heart full of passion, full of fire, full of life. But those who watched closely, those who understood, knew that not all fire brings warmth. Some fire burns everything it touches, and the most dangerous part of all is that the one who carries it often does not realize it until it's too late. Because a man can lose many things in life: wealth, opportunities, even strength. But there is one thing that once lost is almost impossible to regain: trust. And when trust is broken, it does not fall loudly, it falls silently, leaving behind a weight that cannot be carried easily. This is not just a story about anger, it's not just a story about pride, it's a story about a moment where emotion took control and reasoning was left behind. A moment where a man became the very thing he never believed he could be. And from that moment, everything changed. Because sometimes it takes only one moment, one decision, one uncontrolled reaction to turn strength into weakness, respect into shame, and loyalty into betrayal. This is the story of that moment. This is the story of a man whose heart burned too fast. And in that fire, he lost something he could never fully recover. This is the story of Red Heart. Kola was not born different. He was not raised to be feared, nor was he known for recklessness in his early years. As a child, he was like many others in the village, curious, energetic, full of life, and he learned quickly, moved with confidence as well, spoke with boldness that often made the elders smile. This one would grow into something strong, they would say. They were not wrong. Kola grew into a man who carried presence. When he entered a space, people noticed. When he spoke, people listened. When he acted, people paid attention. He was skilled in physical work, quick with his hands, strong in his body, reliable when strength was needed. And for a time, that was enough. Because in many places, strength is admired before wisdom is required. But strength alone cannot guide a man through every moment. And it was in those moments, the ones that required patience, it was in those moments that Kola began to reveal something different. At first, it was small, almost unnoticeable. A quick response when challenged, a sharp word when corrected, a refusal to step back when others would have paused. People dismissed it. He is young, they said. He will learn. But as time passed, those small moments did not fade. They grew. became more frequent, more intense, more difficult to ignore. Kola did not like to be questioned, did not like to be corrected, and most of all, did not like to feel overlooked. If someone spoke over him, he responded immediately. If someone doubted him, he reacted instantly. If something did not go his way, he did not pause to understand why. He simply reacted. And in those reactions, there was always heat, always intensity, always something that felt just slightly uncontrolled. The elders began to notice, not loudly, not publicly, but quietly amongst themselves. His strength is clear, one would say, but his control, another would respond, trailing off without finishing the thought. Because some things do not need to be said fully to be understood. Among the younger men, Kola was admired. He saw his boldness as confidence, his quick reactions as courage, his intensity as power. They did not yet understand the difference between strength and control, between confidence and pride, between passion and danger. It was during this time that the name began to form, not in a single moment, but gradually, quietly, passed from one person to another. At first, it was seen as a compliment. Kola, his heart is strong. His heart burns with fire. But then someone said differently one day, not with admiration, but with caution. His heart is too red. And from that moment, the name changed. It became something else, something heavier, something that carried meaning beyond words. People began to say, "Be careful with him, his heart is red." Not everyone understood it immediately, but those who had seen him in moments of anger, those who had witnessed his reactions, those who had felt the sharp edge of his words, they understood. A red heart. A red heart is not just a heart that feels deeply. It's a heart that reacts too quickly. It's a heart that burns before it thinks. A heart that can turn a small moment into something much bigger. Kola heard the name, of course. He was not unaware, but he did not see it the same way others did. To him, it was not a warning. It was recognition. They see my strength, he thought. They know I do not back down. And so, instead of questioning it, he embraced it, without realizing that what he accepted as strength was slowly becoming his greatest weakness. Because a man who does not see his flaw cannot correct it. And the flaw left unchecked does not remain small. It grows, it builds, it waits for the right moment to reveal its true cost. If Kola was fire, then Tayo was calm water. Where Kola moved quickly, Tayo moved with intention. Where Kola spoke immediately, Tayo listened first. Where Kola reacted, Tayo understood. The two men could not have been more different, and yet they were rarely seen apart. Their friendship had grown over time, not from similarity, but from contrast. After all, did you say opposites attract? Tayo saw something in Kola that others did not fully recognize. Not just his strength, but his potential. He understood that beneath the quick reactions, beneath the sharp words, beneath the burning emotion, there was someone capable of much more. But only if he learned control. And so, in quiet moments, Tayo would speak, not loudly, not forcefully, but gently. "You move too fast," he once said. Kola laughed it off. "And you move too slow," he replied. To Kola, speed was strength. To Tayo, patience was power. They saw the world differently, But Taya never stopped trying. He corrected Kola when necessary, advised him when possible, and most importantly, he stood by him when others stepped back. When Kola's words offended someone, Taya would smooth things over. When Kola reacted too quickly, Taya would explain what he meant. When others began to question Kola's behavior, Taya defended him. He means well, he would say. He just needs time. And for a while, that was enough. People accepted Kola, not just because of who he was, but because of who stood beside him. There were moments when Kola listened, brief moments, where he paused after Tayo spoke, where he considered his words, where he almost changed. But those moments never lasted long. Because change requires more than awareness. It requires discipline. And discipline is built through consistent efforts, something Kola had not yet accepted. One evening, as they sat under a tree at the edge of the village, Tayo spoke again, this time more seriously than before. There will come a time, he said slowly, where your temper will not just create problems. He paused briefly, then continued. It will cost you something important. Kola looked at him unimpressed. You worry too much, he said. Nothing will happen. To him, consequences were distant, abstract even. Something that happened to other people, not to him. Tayo did not argue further. He simply nodded and let the silence settle between them. Because sometimes, the truth does not need to be repeated. It only needs to be remembered. And Tayo knew that one day, Kola would remember those words. Not in conversation, but in consequence. Because life has a way of teaching lessons that words alone cannot. And when that lesson comes, it does not ask if you are ready. It simply arrives, quietly or suddenly, but always at the right time. In every community, there comes a moment that separates those who are ready from those who only believe they are. It does not always arrive loudly. It does not always announce itself with urgency. But when it comes, it reveals something deeper than skill. It reveals character. In the village, that moment arrived on a calm afternoon. The elders gathered in the open square, seated in a quiet line that immediately drew attention. People began to gather, slowly at first, then in larger numbers, because when elders assemble without routine, it means something important is about to be said. Kola was among the first to arrive, not because he had been called directly, but because he understood presence. He knew when and where to be seen. And moments like this were meant for men like him. Tayo stood beside him, calm as always, observing, waiting, saying nothing. When the moment settled, the others among them rose slightly and spoke. His voice was not loud, but it carried enough weight to silence the entire gathering. A journey must be made, he began. A journey beyond this village. The people listened closely. We have been invited to trade, to represent our people, to build connections that would benefit us all. A pause followed, not for effect, but for understanding. Because what he was describing was not ordinary. This was not just a task, it was responsibility, it was trust, it was representation. One person will go, the other continued. One person will carry our name, our values, and our future in that journey. The weight of the words settled over the crowd. This was not about strength alone, not about speed, not about who could speak the loudest. This required something else, something deeper. And yet, among the people, there was already an expectation forming, not spoken loudly, but understood. Kola. His name moved quietly through the crowd, passed from one person to another. It will be him. Who else? He is strong, capable, and respected. Even Kola could feel it, not just hear it, but feel it. The way people glanced in his direction, the way speech seemed to shift slightly around him. The unspoken agreement that this moment belonged to him. And inside him, something began to grow. Not doubt, not curiosity, but certainty. He stood a little straighter. His chest lifted slightly. His expression settled into something firm, something expectant. Because in his mind, the decision had already been made. This was not a question. It was confirmation. Beside him, Tayo remained still, watching, listening, thinking. He did not look at Kola, did not react to the whispers, because he understood something Kola did not. At moments like this are not decided by expectation, they are decided by judgment, careful, deliberate judgment. The other raised his hand slightly, signaling for complete silence. We have observed, he said. We have considered. We have discussed. Each word landed with intention. Slow, measured, final. Kola's focus sharpened. His breathing steadied. His attention locked completely on the other. This was it. The moment everything had been leading towards. The one who will go. The other paused. Not out of hesitation, but because there are some moments that deserve space before they are completed. And in that space, Kola had already stepped forward in his mind, already accepted the role, already claimed the position, without a single word being spoken. Because sometimes, the greatest mistake is not what we do, or what we assume. Silence held the village in place. No one moved. No one spoke. Every eye remained fixed on the other, waiting, expecting, preparing for a moment that felt already decided. Kola stood at the center of that expectation, not physically, but in presence, in attention, in belief. His mind had already crossed the distance between possibility and certainty. To him, this was no longer an announcement. It was confirmation. The other's voice finally broke the silence. The one who will represent this village. A brief pause followed. Not long enough to change anything, but long enough to deepen the moment. It's Tayo. The words settled into the air. Quiet, clear, unmistakable. For a second, nothing happened. No reaction, no movement, just stillness, as if the entire village needed a moment to understand what had just been said. Then the shift began. Slow at first, whispers rising quietly, confusion moving through the crowd, eyes turning, not towards Tayo, but towards Kola, because expectation had just been broken. Kola did not react immediately. His body remained still, his expression unchanged. But inside, something shifted. Not understanding, not acceptance, but resistance. A quiet refusal to process what he had just heard. His mind moved quickly, searching for every explanation there could be. I had wrong. They will correct it. There is more to say, of course, But the other continued speaking, explaining the choice, describing the qualities required, and with every word, the truth became clearer. This was not a mistake. This was a decision, a deliberate one. Cola's breathing changed, subtly at first, then more noticeably. His chest tightened, his jaw set, his hands slowly curled into fists at his sides. The whispers around him grew louder, not mocking, not accusing, but present enough to be felt. And in that moment, his thoughts turned, not towards reflection, but towards reaction. Why him? Why not me? What did he do that I did not do? The questions came quickly, not to understand, but to defend, to protect something inside him that refused to accept what was happening. His eyes moved towards Sayo, who stood quietly, not celebrating, not reacting with pride, but simply standing. And that stillness, that calm acceptance, did not settle Kola. It fueled him, because to a mind already searching for explanation, silence can feel like guilt. The other's voice continued, but Kola was no longer listening. Because once emotion begins to rise, it does not wait for understanding, it moves forward. Faster than thought, faster than reason. And in that moment, something inside Kola began to burn. Not slowly, not quietly, but rapidly, intensely, uncontrolled. The red heart. The red heart was beginning to take over. There are moments in a person's life when emotion does not rise slowly. It does not build with warning, does not ask for permission. It erupts. And when it does, it reveals everything that has been hidden beneath control. In the village square, that moment had arrived. The other's voice continued in the background, explaining the choice, naming the values required, speaking of patience, discipline, and wisdom. But those words no longer reached Kola. They existed, but they did not land. Because inside him, something else had taken over. His heartbeats grew louder, not just faster, louder, as if it was echoing in his ears, as if it was replacing every other sound around him. The whispers of the villagers, the calm tone of the elder, even the quiet presence of Sayo beside him, all of it faded. And in its place, there was only one thing: heat, rising from within, spreading through his chest, climbing into his throat, tightening his breath. His thoughts lost structure, no longer clear, no longer controlled, just fragments. This is wrong. They are blind. He does not deserve it. His feet tightened further. His shoulders stiffened. His entire body held tension, as if he was preparing for something. And then, it happened. Without thought, without pause, without control. No! The word broke through the square like a strike of thunder. Loud, sharp, impossible to ignore. Every voice stopped. Every movement froze. Every eye turned, not towards the other, but towards Kola. The silence that followed was heavier than before, because this silence carried shock, not expectation. The other slowly turned his gaze towards him, calm but firm, waiting, giving him a chance to correct himself. But Kola did not step back. He stepped forward instead. One step, then another, until he stood fully in the open space before the others, breathing heavily, eyes burning with something no longer hidden. "This makes no sense," he said, his voice no longer steady, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "You chose him?" He pointed directly at Tayo, not with respect, but with accusation. "Over me?" The crowd shifted uneasily. This was no longer disagreement. This was challenge. Open, public, disrespectful. The other did not interrupt, because sometimes people must be allowed to reveal themselves fully. And so Kola continued, now unable to stop. "I have done more for this village than anyone else. I am stronger. I am more capable. If anyone is to go, I should go." Each word rose higher than the last. Each sentence pushed him further from control and closer to something else, something dangerous. Tayo stepped forward slightly, not in challenge, but in calm intention. "Kola," his voice was low, measured, trying to ground the moment. "This is not the way." "Don't," Kola snapped, cutting him off sharply. "Do not speak as if you deserved it." The words landed hard, not just on Tayo, but on everyone listening. Because now, this was no longer about the decision. This was personal. And in that moment, Kola crossed the line, not with his feet, but with his heart. The red heart had taken full control. There are mistakes, and then there are moments that cannot be undone. Not because they are permanent in action, but because they reveal something permanent in character. The village stood still, watching, listening, not just to Kola's words, but to what those words meant. The respect he once carried, the quiet admiration people had for him, the image of strength and reliability, all of it hung in the balance. And with every passing second, it began to fall apart. The elder finally spoke, not loudly, not harshly, but with a weight that carried across the entire square. "Enough." One word. Simple. Final. But Kola was no longer in a place to hear it, because when anger reaches its peak, it does not respond to calm. It reacts to itself. He turned again towards Tayo, stepping closer. Too close. "Say it," he demanded. "Tell them why you deserve it." Tayo did not move, did not raise his voice, did not match the energy in front of him. Because true strength does not need to prove itself in noise. "Kola," he said quietly, "this is not about deserving. It's about what is needed." But those words only made it worse. Because to someone controlled by emotion, calm can feel like superiority. And in that moment, Kola saw it as an insult, as mockery, as something that needed to be answered. His hand moved before the thought returned. Fast, sharp, uncontrolled, he shoved Tayo. Hard. Not enough to injure badly, but enough to change everything. Tayo stepped back, catching his balance. The crowd gasped, not loudly, but enough to fill the silence with shock. This was no longer just disrespect. This was disgrace, public, clear. Kola stood there breathing heavily, chest rising and falling, eyes still burning. But now something else had begun to appear beneath it. Awareness. Not full awareness, but the beginning of it. Because silence had returned, but it was different. Did not carry expectation, did not carry curiosity, it carried judgment. The other rose to his feet slowly, deliberately, his gaze fixed on Kola, not with anger, but with disappointment. You have answered the question we did not need to ask, he said. His voice calm, but heavier than before. Strength without control. He paused, letting the word settle. Is not strength. Kola's feet slowly loosened. His breathing began to slow down. And now the moment he had refused to face stood clearly in front of him. Not as accusation, but as truth. He looked around, at the faces of the villagers, at the space that had quietly formed around him. And then at Tayo, who said nothing, who did nothing, but whose silence now carried meaning. Not anger, not revenge, but something far more painful, disappointment. And it was then Kola realized something too late. He had not just lost opportunity, he had lost something far more important. Respect, trust, and the one person who stood beside him without needing to compete. The red heart had cost him everything. Thank you for watching Red Heart. Please subscribe to KT Production for more amazing stories, and don't forget to like and share as well. Thank you for watching Red Heart. Please like, share, and subscribe. And also remember to check back for more inspiring stories.